What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Liam Picks Fights Live. And today on the show, we are joined by the man, the myth, the legend. He's back once again. You loved him last week, so we're bringing him back. It's Fight Night Bets. And guys, we got to come up with a better name for this. We're going to have one for next week. But for now, this is episode 2. We're breaking down the full card for UFC 284. And glad to be joined by a long-term winner, one of the top 5 rated bettors on BetMMA.tips, and not just now, that's been for years. So very excited to have him on the show. Rich, how you doing, brother?
Good, man. I like the introduction. Long-term winner. You're not wrong.
That's the key, man. A lot of people don't realize that it's easy to find a bet 1 week. It's very hard to do this week in and week out and continue to identify value. So 5 years, I believe, is a tracked winner for you. I'm working on my 3rd year this year, hoping for a 3rd year in a row in the green. I started off when I knew nothing about betting, bet for about a half year, was in the red. Since then, 2 years in the green, last year plus 100 units. So we're looking to put money in your pocket. We're looking to give you long-term plus EV strategies. And that's what we're here to do. We got a great card to do it with. We're talking about a pay-per-view offering, pound-for-pound offering when we get to the main event. But we're going to start off like we normally do at the bottom of the card. We're going to look first at Zubaira Tahugov versus Elvis Brenner. This is a fight where, we shouldn't spend too much time talking about it because there's like a 50% chance it's not going to happen. You look at Zubaira Tahugov's career, and the guy has as many cancellations, pullouts, withdrawals, and like the UFC canceling his fight because he gets in a brawl. It's like the guy's had as many cancellations as bouts come to completion. His opponent, UFC newcomer, he's at a new weight class for this fight. So I guess the weight miss is probably not on the table here. But again, we're dealing with a massive favorite, minus 600 tag. I'll tell you the truth. I will never play Zubaira Tahugov at those kind of prices. Not for me. I think that he's a talented-ish fighter. I think that by the 3rd round in most of his fights, he's disinterested in fighting entirely. He's running away. That image of Hakeem Dawodu chasing him down and yelling at him will always stick with me. That's the kind of guy you don't want to be betting as a massive favorite, in my view. Is his opponent something to write home about? No, probably not another one of the Charles Oliveira, favors. You get the championship belt, you just start signing your own guys to the organization. He's another shootbox Diego Lima character. Don't think he's one of their best, but I think that he's going to come here with, likely 15 minutes worth of cardio. His only 3 losses in his career by decision. So I think that this is an interesting spot. I think looking at an over here potentially to fade the narrative is something I might do because Zubaira is such a big favorite. But I also saw Zubaira by split decision is plus 600. He's gone to split decision in a number of his fights. I don't know if this is the guy to do it, but curious about your thoughts on this one, Rich.
Yeah, this was one of the fights on the card that I was going to pass on. But then when I knew I was coming on the show, I thought I better get an opinion on it. So yeah, the Russian probably coasts here. I don't mind him in the distance, to be honest. When I look at this guy, Elvis Brenner, his takedown defense is too bad, like really bad. He's a stand-up fighter. So I think the Russian's going to have his way with him. Certainly going to win the decision. I think the Brazilian is probably KO or bust. I think the Russian's too savvy on the ground to get subbed. But yeah, with it being his debut, Brenner, and with it being in Australia, making that flight for the first time, I think all his regional fights are in Brazil. I don't hate a shot on in the distance line. And I think the Russian by sub is something like 1,200, something like that, which I know sub isn't like his win condition. His win condition is to like Russian coast and be boring and, avoid the fight like you were saying. But plus 1,200 is intriguing against a debutant. And I've seen someone mention it before. The UFC in the first bout of the night, they like to put on, an exciting one, get the fans pumped up. There's usually a lot of finishes. So yeah, I don't hate the Russian by sub, but I'll probably pass, man.
Yeah, I'm seeing as high as 11-1 is still available on the market, but on most of the sharper markets, it's around plus 900. So definitely a little bit shaded there towards that submission prop. And yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I don't think that Tahugov uses all of his skills, with the most intensity, right? Not the most intentionality, but he has the skills. So he should be the side here, should win the fight. But again, just not a kind of guy I like to trust. He's a 7 years older. You know, he's like got some things not to like about him. I feel like in this spot, some bouts of inactivity as well. Over 400 days, I believe, out of the octagon, couple cancellations, like I mentioned, but he should be better skill for skill on the night. So if he makes it to the cage, we'll think that Zubaira Tahugov gets his hand raised. Next up, folks, Blake Builder is taking on Shane Young. This is a weird fight here. You know, Blake Builder got the win as an underdog in the Contender Series. I thought that he looked very suspect in the lead up to the Contender Series. I thought that he looked a little suspect on the Contender Series as well. So he's not a side that I'd be looking to get invested in. But on the other side, Shane Young, I feel like he's kind of been exposed as not a very quality UFC fighter. His best skills are on the feet. He's had tests on the feet and just been exposed as not quite as good as his opposition. Omar Morales struggled to get wins in the UFC, was able to get the win over him there. I did have a bet on Omar Morales as a short favorite in that fight. Then you look at, you know, the Ludovic Klein fight. Ludovic Klein basically has only tape of him head kicking people on the left side, and Shane Young just was unprepared for it, got blasted out of there in the first round. So a couple concerning things there. His wins in the UFC haven't aged very well. But that being said, he's 2-0 as a favorite in the UFC for a pretty decent ROI. So I understand why people want to back him here. He's the hometown fighter. He's fighting a guy who's not that good, who's pretty susceptible to getting hurt on the feet, let's say. But I just think that Shane Young is also susceptible to getting hurt on the feet. I don't have great faith in either of these fighters, so not looking to lay chalk on the Shane Young side. If anything, I'd probably look at violence here. I think that both these guys are just liable to make a fatal mistake. And it could cost them. What do you think about this one, Rich?
Yeah, there's a bit of a theme on this card. Like there's 3 or 4 California guys fighting, and Builder is one of them. So I obviously don't like that. It's obviously a long flight haul from California to Australia. So I don't like that for Builder. And yeah, in terms of skill sets, I don't think he's got the power to put Young out. Which has obviously been Young's problem. You mentioned the Klein KO. He seems like a sub guy to me, Builder. That seems to be his like win condition, you know, but an opportunist when it comes to the subs. You know, he doesn't have great takedowns. He's not the best submission artist, but if you give someone up, he'll happily take it. And I don't think he's going to get that here with Young. I think Young's going to win it by decision. You know, Young isn't very dangerous himself. And yeah, I like Young by decision, and I think it's sitting around about plus 200, something like that. So I don't hate that bet.
You can get as high as plus 260 on some of the U.S. domestics, way lower on sharper markets. They're respecting it as about a 35% outcome here. So I think that makes a lot of sense to me. The one problem I have with props on the Shane Young side is like, I feel like Builder is just like vulnerable to be knocked out. Like it could be against anybody. He just has really bad defensive tendencies. I thought that he was getting hurt and dropped by like, you know, pretty average guys in CFFC. So I was like, oh God, this is not going to translate well at the UFC level. He's also a little bit older as far as prospects go coming into the organization. But I would have to agree. Shane Young is probably the side here, but not a fight that I'm very confident in, not a fight I'm going to be having much exposure to. Because I think both guys have a little bit of fraudulence to their game. Next up, Loma Lookboonmee taking on Elise Reed. And I don't mind starting this one off because I actually have a pretty strong take here. I looked into this fight pretty deep. You know, Loma Lookboonmee has been more effective in her UFC fights. There's no two ways about it. She's fought, I think, very fair level of competition for her skill set, for her size. She's going out there getting takedowns. She's done much better against common opponents. And I think that in the clinch, she's going to be dominant. I think she'll be the more physical force. I think she'll land more impactfully. And I think she has the more takedown upside of the two. I think that Elise Reed, the real problem I have with her is that, you know, 3 losses, pro and amateur, all of them coming inside the distance, got brutally finished by Sijara Eubanks in the first round, didn't offer much resistance, didn't have much of a ground game to show in that spot. Granted, it was a mismatch in size and skill, but also absorbed a lot of damage in that spot. Also been finished in subsequent bouts against less impressive competition like Sam Hughes. So I just think that there's not a ton to love about the Elise Reed side. You mentioned the long flight over as well, whereas Loma Lookboonmee is training out of Bangtown Muay Thai. She's training with the Hickman brothers, same place where Volkanovski is getting his wrestling looks. It's like, they put them both on the same card as well. I think that that's not by accident. I think that this is the kind of fight that's being set up for Loma Lookboonmee to maybe get that first UFC finish. She only has one knockout win in her career. She is a point fighter most of the time, but it's not like she's not doing damage in her fights. It's not like she's not getting to dominant positions. I think that in a fight where she has an opponent a little bit more willing to find that exit door, if things start going sideways, I think that might be what it takes. So Loma Lookboonmee, I'm going to say TKO, 2 elbows from the top position. That's what I like. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I love it. I'm of the same thinking, man. I think TKO round 2, round 3 is pretty live. I don't like Reed. I don't like her off her back. She offers nothing, no get-ups. I think she kind of mentally breaks in there too if she doesn't have her way. So it's up to Loma, who did impress me with her wrestling. You go watch her against Lupe Godinez, and we know how good Godinez is at wrestling. That's her bread and butter. And, Loma made it competitive. She was hitting trips, body lock takedowns. She was just obviously outclassed in that one. But I definitely think she can get some top time here and rain some elbows down. And Reed is just the type of person to, succumb to that pressure and, shell up and cash the TKO bet for the Loma backers, man.
I love it. I love it. And I think that the potential trap here, right, is people always like to reduce juice. You always have to think when there's a big favorite, especially in WMMA, people like to reduce the juice. And what are they going to look at? They're going to look at that -135 on Loma by decision. You know what I found very curious, guys? I went back and checked, and Loma by decision has been plus money in every UFC bout, except for this one. And what do we know about when they try and draw you in with that slight chalk? It worked last week on Tyra by sub, but guys, so many times that short chalk price on the prop market will make you cry because you think, oh, this is logically how it should go. And then it doesn't go exactly how you thought. So just as a little bit of a warning there, as a little bit of a preface, yes, Loma Lookboonmee is a decision machine, no doubt about it. She's an over machine. The opposite is true of Elise Reed. She loves to get finished. She loves to get beat inside the distance. She doesn't want to go to the decision. So I think that that's just an interesting way to look at this fight. Plus 420, Loma by knockout. Don't hate it. Next up, folks, a fight that I do not have very strong opinions about. We got Jack Jenkins, another one of these Contender Series guys, taking on Don Sheinus. And I would say Jack Jenkins was obviously the more impressive of the two of these guys in their last outing. He was able to get the win. But Don Sheinus was just way overmatched, brought in on short notice, looked like the smaller fighter, looked underprepared, looked very anxious about the matchup. And Sadiq Yusuff took full advantage, just barnstormed the guy and got him out of there. But I think that Sadiq Yusuff would be an absolute problem for Jack Jenkins if they fought today as well. So this is a much more compelling matchup for me, Rich. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I am interested in this fight. Last week, I gave out my best bet and best prop. It was a Tybora best bet and the Jap guy in the opener, Tiara in the distance. And this week, my best bet will be, well, actually, I've got two props that I really like. Jenkins in the distance is -110. And I like him also a small bet by submission, plus 400. I think that Don is a total bum. Again, he's traveling from the US. He is a blue collar guy. I think he does is pretty much like meat and potatoes. He wants to go in there, punch, clinch, try and get a takedown. I think you have a bit of success for about a minute or so, but the more athletic guy in Jenkins is going to reverse him, maybe ride out round 1, and then come round 2 or 3, it's going to be all Jenkins and Don in survival mode. And I really think he's going to get the finish. And like I say, it's a nice number, -110, or at least it was when I had a look at it. And I don't hate the submission, man. Plus 400. We've seen in the Dana White Contender Series fight, Jenkins road top control, raining down elbows. And I just think when you've got someone who, in my opinion, is not a sure thing, nothing's a lock, but, there's a high percentage he's going to finish this fight. If you've got one prop and it's plus 400 and the TKO is like plus 100, sprinkle the sub. I think it's pretty much 50-50. So, yeah, Jenkins is my big bet this week. And I think he gets it done in the distance, man.
I like that take, and I'll tell you why in part. It seems like there's a really disproportionate amount of money coming in on the over for this fight, which makes very little sense to me. When you have a guy that just got finished inside of like, what was that? It couldn't have been more than 90 seconds. It's just off the top of my head with that Sadiq fight. It's like, how would you be pricing that minus 135 to go over 7.5 minutes the next time out? That just seems shocking to me, to be fair. So I think that under here could be a good look. The one thing that I did notice about the lines is they're basically shading this towards Sheinus needs to win the fight by knockout or he's screwed. Like if you look at really sharp markets, they're basically correlating his money line much closer with his KO than anything else. So things to think about, if you want to try and scalp insurance on Don Sheinus, then you maybe just look for the knockout at 10-1, 9.5-1. But other than that, I think he's probably drawn up Schitt's Creek without a paddle here. They have not done him any favors with the matchmaking. Maybe he gets one more stateside, but this could be his swan song in the UFC.
Yeah, well. You don't need insurance in this fight. Don't put anything on Don. Just bet Jenkins. He's not going to have any problems. Don, he showed what he's about in that Sadiq fight. Punch, and then he wants to clinch, man. And he got caught out in that one. Maybe he takes Jenkins down for a minute, but he's going to get reversed and he's going to get smashed, man. Don't overthink it, man. Just load up on Jenkins.
I feel you. All his wins are by first round knockout, basically. So that's all I'm saying. He's got one way to win. Next up, folks, we are looking at Jamie Malarkey as a huge shock favorite. That's never gone sideways before. Taking on Francisco Prado. I mean, if there was ever a time that Jamie Malarkey looks tempting as a favorite, I was going back and looking at Prado. I don't think that Samurai Fight House is very talent rich as an organization. Let's just say I remember watching the fights. I did bet Eileen Perez in that fight against Stephanie Egger because I thought she would have the advantage on the feet. But the ground game is so bad on that regional scene. And it got exposed, pretty early on in that fight. So for me, I can't really trust people coming out of this scene until I see some results in the octagon. Like we have data sets from a lot of these organizations regionally. CFFC overperforms relative to other American organizations. The Northeast, Beast Coast stand up. But what I'm talking about is like there's some place around the world that we know, Alaska FC, you got to have skeptical hippo eyes because most of the guys that come from there stink. So it's just like we know if people come from a given regional scene, got to approach it with a different level of caution. I think that's appropriate here. Malarkey, for all his faults and all his problems, he has been pretty solid at the UFC level, right? He's competed with almost everybody, thought that it was kind of a robbery the night he lost to Fares Ziam. And I think I bet Fares that night. So no bias there. I got the money, but I was like, wow, that was kind of a screw job. Malarkey always has his chin on the line. That's why I don't like betting him as a big favorite. He gets hit way too much, way too early in fights. But I think that if this fight gets extended even at all, he's going to be a much larger favorite on the in-play market. What do you think about this one, Reg?
Yeah, pretty much what you said, man. Prado's nothing special. I'm not too familiar with Samurai Fight House, but it doesn't seem like the best.
Argentinian regionals.
Yeah, forget that, man. But yeah, you can't play Malarkey at this number. And I don't really trust him at all, man. Like his sense of urgency in there. Like if you watch a tiny bit of tape on Prado, you would know that wrestling is the way to go in this one. He can throw some heat on the feet. He is 20, and yeah, that goes against him. But that also means he's like youthful, energetic, and he's going to actually go for it. So you do have to watch your P's and Q's, man, or you will get knocked out. And yeah, I'm just staying away. I don't trust. It's like you said earlier, people try and like minimize the money line when it's this wide and try and play something in the distance. And I'm just not going to try and be too cute with that one and just stay away, man.
I mean, think about the fact that Jamie Malarkey just went the distance with like 38, 39-year-old Michael Johnson, who's had chin problems himself. It's like, and now people are going to rush to the window, in my opinion, to bet Jamie Malarkey inside the distance here because he's fighting somebody that doesn't look that good. But this is also the biggest fight of the kid's career, which means you're going to get an exceptional amount of effort. And I think to your point, 20-year-olds, they're good and bad. They're full of piss and vinegar. They're confident as hell. They think they're going to win. That means they might burn out in the first round on you, but they also might spark you out in the first round. And I think that he's going to come with a lot of ferocious energy. And Jamie Malarkey's been knocked dead before. You guys can find the footage. Volkanovski put this guy in a body bag in really brutal fashion. So granted, that's one of the better fighters out there, but this is on the Australian regional scene. His chin being a problem is not new. And I thought he got hurt in the Michael Johnson fight as well. So Jamie Malarkey's chin, not something I would trust at these huge chalk prices. But I do think this fight should trend towards the under because of how both guys fight.
Yeah,
next up.
definitely. And if you look at his record too, his wins haven't really aged well at all. Like Devontae Smith was probably his biggest win. The Karma Worthy one, I don't really count because he's just chinny as hell. And before that, he was on L's, losing to Faraz Zaim. You know what I mean? How bad's that guy's takedown defense? You couldn't take him down and win a decision or submit him like Terrence McKinney did. So
his top control is poor. His ground control is not good. A lot of what I've noticed is there are people that develop their wrestling game, but they never add any ancillary skills that would make it useful. You know, they're like, yeah, I'll take you down. And then you pop right back up to your feet. And then I let you go. And it's like, yeah, I got 4 takedowns. I didn't do fuck all with it. But so I think that's Malarkey's biggest problem. He's not a very effective fighter in that way. That's why he doesn't have a lot of finishes either. Except for over Kama Worthy, who, you know, it's like a free knockout if you can make it long enough in the fight. And I like Kama Worthy. I actually bet him in that fight because I think Jamie Malarkey stinks. Next up, Clayton Rodriguez taking on Shannon Ross at 125 pounds. This is an interesting one, guys, because I'll tell you, I did not have a good impression of Shannon Ross coming off the Contender Series. But then I'm seeing in interviews this week, he's like having appendix failure or whatever. Like he was going through it physically, you know, heading into that fight. And he does seem like a very tough guy. He's gotten hurt and dropped in a number of fights, which again, things that scare me off betting somebody, especially when he was a minus 225 favorite when he was on the show. But now you're looking at a complete reversal in fortune, right? He's a plus 270 underdog here coming in against a guy who just fumbled the bag against enhancement talent in CJ Vergara. So not good, you know, and when I look at my instinct on this fight is like Clayton Rodriguez should just take this guy to the ground and submit him. Like he should have the ground game to do that. But then when I started looking at how the line's moving, it's indicating that there's sharp movement coming in the opposite direction. I think that Shannon Ross is a potentially live underdog here. He's a local market fighter. There was no reason for the UFC to bring him back in. They did bring him back in, and it could be because they found a busted prospect in Clayton Rodriguez who they thought was something special, who had the fun game and the fun style. But then when they put him against minor resistance, he kind of fell apart a little bit. And granted, I thought he beat CJ Vergara. But if you're fighting right within the margins with CJ Vergara, when guys like Tyra are, you know, dancing circles around him and choking him, you know, not a good look for you. So I think that that's the kind of problem that I have with Clayton. I think that he should win this fight, especially if he wants to get back on track as a prospect. But right now, the betting market is telling me the opposite. They're saying that Shannon Ross is the sharp side. So for me, I have my hands off this fight right now, but curious to see how this moves. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I'm not betting it either, but I like everything you said there. I kind of really didn't look into it. I quickly looked at Clayton Rodriguez, looked at his fight against CJ Vergara and thought, what the fuck? I can't bet this guy. Stupid, gases, not really good at anything. Watched a bit of regional tape. Thought maybe I could play him by submission. But I thought, no, I'm just clutching at straws here. So yeah, I don't hate a shot on the underdog, Ross. Rodriguez, he kind of throws one punch at a time. He doesn't really throw combos. So yeah, what more can you say? I don't hate a shot on the dog, but I'm not taking it.
Yeah, I didn't take it either. Reason being, my gut instinct had said Clayton Rodriguez should win the fight. But I also cannot bet on any of these Clayton props. They've been nerfed, first and foremost. It's under 3-1 on the knockout, based on what? And then it's under, you know, like 3.5-1 in most places for the sub as well. So just not really a lot to sink your teeth into on the favorite. And at plus 270, you know, in a fight where the guy just went to a close decision, like he was showing like his best effort gets me a close decision against CJ Vergara. And we're saying the other guy's plus 270 on the money line here. It does seem quite aggressive to me. My man YBB says Shannon Ross, low-key exciting, killer be killed, always entertaining. By the way, guys, sharpest chat in the game. I say it each and every week. It's getting sharper and sharper. We got my man Billy We got Furio bets in here as well. Just a lot of really sharp killers. Moyes always pulling up. He's got Malarkey by sub. I don't know, Moyes. I don't know. This guy, this guy doesn't always have the best brain thinking, but I could see it. But anyways, guys, appreciate you all being here. 55 people rocking with us live, and hope many more people join us as we go. Drop a like on this video, guys. Show some love, show some support, and make sure that you're following my guy Fight Night Bets on social media as well, because we're doing this content to help the people out. Next up, Josh Culibao taking on Melsik Bogdasarian at 145 pounds. And Josh Culibao's been my guy. You know, he's been one of my like hidden gems at 145, where every time out he's plus 300 and I just get a chance to bet him, and he goes out there and makes it a war. Always gives you a good sweat. I believe he's 1-1-1 as a UFC underdog. So he's done the gambit. He's been out there. He got absolutely blasted by Jalen Turner. No fault in that. Short notice debut. Not the kind of guy you want to fight in a short notice debut. He just got absolutely steamrolled in that spot. But subsequent, he's done well for what he has, for his attributes, for the fact that he's not the most athletic looking guy on the planet. He's just a guy that knows how to fight. He's got some skills. I think that's where this kind of rubber meets the road. You know, it's like, I like Josh Culibao when he's fighting other guys that have a negative strike differential and just want to swing and bang in the pocket and can't get hurt. Melsik Bogdasarian, though, doesn't strike me as a guy who is going to be dealing equal blow for blow with Josh Culibao. I feel like if Melsik hits this guy, it's going to hurt a lot more. The other thing that I noticed is Melsik looks to be in incredible shape for this fight. He's taken some time off between performances, but then it's not just because of an injury or something like that. He like got married and has like personal life development, and he's been training the whole time alongside that, from what I could tell from his social media. So Melsik looks to be in the best shape of his career. He's a very dangerous striker, and it's not like we're saying, yo, Liam, you get the same proposition again. Josh Culibao plus 300. No, Josh Culibao's now been nerfed. He's minus 105. He's minus 110. Everybody's pitching a Josh Culibao play this weekend. For me, that's when I have to get off the bus. I have to say, Josh, it's been fun. It's been a good ride, but I'm going to let this one go. I think Melsik projects higher as a prospect. I think he's a little bit more dangerous. I think he's a little bit closer to his goals right now. But am I willing to lay the chalk with Melsik? Again, I'm not necessarily inspired to do that. I would probably take a smaller play on Melsik by knockout to get creative in this fight. I do think that is his best path in this fight. I think he can win a decision against Josh, but it also would come by the path that Josh has never landed more than 53 significant strikes in a UFC fight. Many of them have gone the distance to the full 15. Melsik's landed over 100 significant strikes on the Contender Series before. He's landed 70 significant strikes plus in a UFC bout before. He's just going to do more. He's going to be more active, in my opinion. He's also going to be the one walking Josh down, I would have to assume. And it's not like Josh is above getting hurt himself. He could get hurt. He could get rocked. He could get wobbled, and he's constantly in the fire. I feel like this is a Melsik knockout spot, unfortunately. But I do like Josh, and I hope that he has a great UFC career. Rich, what do you think?
I think that Moyes has got a good point here in the comments. Melsik, 34-hour travel, round 3, jet lag, exhaust. I really want to bet Melsik here, and I'm with you. I really want to bet the KO. I think if Culibao doesn't take him down, he's in trouble. I think it's a mismatch on the feet. I think Melsik's got his number. He's just the far better kickboxer, boxer, whatever you want to call it. And I think Culibao needs to wrestle and take him down. And I'm just not sure he's strong enough to do that. But the only reason I'm not jumping on Melsik and Melsik by KO is because his cardio, man. If you go and watch some of his fights, after round 1, you know, his mouth's open. He overloads on every shot he throws. Yeah, he is more athletic, but, you know, it's MMA, man. Being athletic isn't just going to win you a fight. There's other factors too. So I'm not sure yet. I think it's Melsik, a Melsik by KO or pass. I don't trust Culibao. I don't know whether he's going to implement takedowns. I don't know whether he does. They're going to be successful. But yeah, if you look at the under, I think that's sitting around plus 115, which isn't bad. It's kind of stayed there for the last couple of days as well at plus money. That covers obviously Melsik by KO or Melsik dying and, you know, Josh getting some freaky fucking in the distance win. So yeah, Melsick by KO, but I'm not sure yet, man.
Yeah, both of these guys have knockdown potential, which I think when you're looking at an under, when you're looking at a fight ends inside the distance, a KO type of line, I think that's just all to your credit. It's all beneficial, you know. This is the kind of fight where both guys have gone the distance a number of times, but it's not for a lack of effort. Like they're swinging bombs at the other guy's head trying to end the fight. So I feel like these are the kind of guys that, you know, maybe we get that mispriced. Maybe we get, because the average at 145 is more often than not, it goes to decision. Maybe we get a little bit of a nicer price on the under here with two explosive guys, knockdown potential, and we got one guy who might have a cardio deficiency. So Melsick in the first round is way more likely to win this fight by knockout, in my opinion. But in round 2 and round 3, that's when Culibao's finishing equity starts to come into play. So I like that as a look. It covers both options. It's still at plus money. I don't think that's a bad way to play this at all. So maybe the total is the way to avoid some of the variance in this fight and find a plus money angle. Next up, guys, 205 pounds. Our prelim headliner is going to be between Tyson Pedro and Modestas Bukauskas. And when you're looking at Tyson Pedro, he is so clearly the UFC's chosen guy here. Like they would much rather he comes out of this with the win. Why? Because they've invested a lot of time, effort, and energy in this fucking guy, and he's panned out for nothing so far. So they have brought him along slow. They gave him the ghost of Shogun Rua and a bunch of other fights that were supposed to be highlight reels. He had some unfortunate injuries. He spent some time out of the octagon as well. I think that this is the kind of fight where talking about somebody being set up for failure, right? Like somebody not being given, being dealt from the bottom of the deck. They've brought back Modestas Bukauskas on short notice, flying halfway across the world. I think he's going to be focused, prepared, ready. I think that he's going to be dialed in. I just think this is a terrible matchup on those kind of conditions, on this short notice, against a guy who is a first-round dynamo. And we've seen that he's not invincible, right? He can be hurt on the feet. Modestas can be dropped. He can be taken down at times as well. So I think that there's some causes for concern. I think that this is a step up in competition relative to the guys he's been fighting in Cage Warriors as well. So for me, I think that Bukauskas, if the fight gets extended, he's obviously a live underdog in my view. I think that Tyson Pedro, that's the reason for his problems, is that he is a mental midget, as you like to say. He's somebody that breaks apart when he has to think about the fight for more than 5 minutes. He's like, I thought I was supposed to win by now. What happened? Like he starts to panic in my view. That's why he collapses in round 2 routinely. It's like some people's losses are pathological. Like they can't help it. Once it starts going wrong, it just keeps going wrong. So I think that if you're looking for a way to bet both sides, it would be round 1 for Pedro and round 2 for Modestas Bukauskas, because I think the longer this fight goes, the more chance he makes a miraculous comeback. He has the beautiful comeback story arc, this kind of thing. But MMA doesn't have a lot of happy endings. He's probably going to get submitted in the first round and then have to rebuild from there. So what do you think about this one, Rich?
I think it's an intriguing fight, man. Everybody I've talked to has said Pedro is going to win by KO. You know, he's going to demolish him. But I don't think so. I don't think Pedro is going to KO him at all. And I think although this is a bad fight for Modestas to take because it's on short notice, what is it, 2 weeks notice, if that? You know, he's just won a fight 4 weeks ago. He probably partied after that fight, put on a bit of weight. He definitely wasn't in the gym. He was probably celebrating being, the double champ, as he liked to keep bragging about on Instagram. But anyway, I think Pedro's going to sub him. I think that's Pedro's win condition. I know he's knocked out his last 2 opponents, but they were complete bums. A stiff wind would have fucking toppled them over. But Modestas, he is half decent, man. His takedown defense isn't bad, but I went and watched some regional stuff. He fought a Polish guy, Wozniak, something like that, and he took him down repeatedly. I think if Pedro can get into the cage and get a double leg on him, I think he'll take him down. But Modestas, even though this is short notice and he's the one traveling, he's got the superior cardio, in my opinion. He's also always had good cardio. So that is a danger for Pedro, who is usually round 1 or bust. I'm on Pedro's sub. I really like that. I like the number as well. It's somewhat stupid, almost plus 500. But he needs to be careful, man. If he doesn't get him out in the first round, I'm going to be sweating it because, like you said, he's a bit of a mentor midget, this Tyson Pedro. So I will be sweating it if it isn't a round 1 sub.
Yeah, and the one other thing that I will note, because I had liked Modestas coming into the UFC, not as like a future champion or a future contender or something, but just I liked one thing about him, which is he's got heart. Like he was put in bad situations in some of his fights. Like I mentioned, he wasn't always the most athletic guy. He wasn't always the best fighter in these fights, but he would outwork somebody, outlast them, finally get up after being taken down, like you said, 3, 4, 5 times. Big red flags. But he would work back to his feet and then the other guy would break and he would beat him. So like he would finish guys that would break mentally from him just getting back into the fight. And I do think that even coming back from that horrific injury and getting 2 wins, it just shows the guys, he does have resolve. He's not going to just fucking quit at the first sign of adversity, but grappling skill is grappling skill. When Dan Hooker got his fucking arm shoved behind his back by Islam Makhachev, it doesn't matter if you're a tough guy or you're a badass or whatever the fuck you want. Your arm's going to break. Your shoulder is about to snap. Like the referee's going to intervene or you have to tap for your own safety and your health. It's like he could be the toughest guy with the best resolve in the world, but if he has his arm behind his back, he's going to tap. So that's the thing that I think is ultimately the difference maker here. But I wanted to give him that credit just because if you guys have a big play on Pedro and it gets to the end of round 1, you might just want to think to yourself, let me look at that live number and see what my ARB options are here because we've seen him fall apart in round 2 on a number of occasions. But
yeah, and I don't even think Modestas will tap. I think he's that much of a fucking retard. He wouldn't even tap, man. If someone had a Kimura locked in, his pride would get the better of him. He's one of them guys at the pub. I never tap, bro. So yeah, I wouldn't bet KO. I see someone in the comments saying Pedro by KO. I don't know about that, man. It seems a bit of a trap. It's tapology betting, isn't it? He's won his last 2 by KO. Modestas short notice. I'll bet it by KO again. I don't think so. Anyway, that's my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, let us know, Understand Boxing, what you got when you do your study. But for me, this is a fight that it's probably going to end violently. It's probably going to end early. I think either side winning inside the distance is how this one's going to go down. But we got a main card fight to break down, guys. So as we kick into the main card, make sure you get subscribed to the channel. Make sure you drop a like if you haven't already. 64 people rocking with us live for the main card breakdown. So let's get into it. Jimmy Crute taking on Alonzo Menifield. Listen, you have to have opinions in this business, right? You'll agree with some of my opinions. You'll disagree with some of my opinions. I've always thought that Alonzo Menifield was no good. I don't see it. I never thought that he was going to be the next big thing. When I look at his recent performances, he's looked a little more aggressive. He's looked a little more assertive in the octagon. I'll give him some credit. I thought that was good. But what is it? 3 fights ago, we're losing to William Knight by like cage pushing for the first 4 minutes and nobody landed a significant strike. But this guy came forward and swung and just attempted offense, William Knight, and he won the 3rd round as a result. It's like, if you could be that inactive and that ineffective for 5 minutes of fighting that somebody beats you by throwing strikes that don't land, I can't bet on you. Like that's not the business I'm trying to be in. Now, am I in the business of laying minus 210s on Jim Crute? No, I did bet Jamal Hill. I will, thank the Lord above that I bet him last time out against Jim Crute. I would have cried if I had a Jim Crute ticket there. But I thought to myself, Jamal Hill, massive hitter, extremely dangerous fighter, world champion, right? That is not what we're getting here, right? Alonzo Menifield, sneaky old, 35 years of age. Obviously more athletic than the average 35-year-old. Got to give him that credit too. But he's not being built as the next light heavyweight prospect, in my view. Jim Crute is 26 years of age. They just got his face broken by putting him in there with Jamal Hill. Got to take a step back. Got to go to the back end of the division. Got to look for guys on that fringe top 15. I think they've done the right job here. I think that they've found a guy that has, put together a couple big wins by getting to the top position. But when he was at an athletics disadvantage against somebody like OSP was styling on him. OSP was like dancing and showboating and laughing around him and then dropped him with a left hook in embarrassing fashion. I think that's the last time OSP knocked anybody out. So by the way, he fought the ghost of Shogun Hua in the interim. So real big concerns there. I think that Alonzo Menifield probably not getting knocked out in this fight, but getting taken down and submitted by Jim Crute, who is just taking down Anthony Smith, a black belt, and a guy, who has some wrestling chops easily. Like, it was no big deal. Anytime he wanted on one leg, like he's not going to be able to take this guy down. I don't see why not. So I think especially this is probably in a larger octagon, I'd have to assume, pay-per-view, bigger arena. He's going to have space to work as well. Blast double leg incoming. I think Jimmy Crute's going to get on top of him and finish him in the first round. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, when I first seen the fight was announced on Tapology, I thought Crute submission. That's an easy bet. There's one in the pocket for me. And then I looked at it again, man. I looked at his wrestling, Crute, to see how good, he'd be able to get this to the mat. And I didn't like what I was seeing. He had a double leg on somebody. I'm just trying to find it now. It might have been Modestus in the early going. He tried to take down and couldn't. Modestus had good takedown defense. So yeah, I kind of passed on it. But yeah, I'm with you now. I've cashed on fading Menifield. I bet William Knight against him as a big underdog. I bet OSP against Menifield as an underdog. So my record's pretty good on fading Menifield. And I think if I had to bet here, I'd say Crute submission, probably round 2, maybe round 3. There should be some big prizes. But yeah, I'm the same as you. I don't like Menifield. I think in the OSP fight, he showed everything he's all about. He just ran out of ideas, so then rushed forward and he got dropped. He got countered and dropped. So yeah, I don't think he's a proper fighter, Menifield. I think he's just some big, black, scary guy, and he's very limited in all aspects.
All right, guys. Prayer circle for Jimmy Crute by sub bets is starting 5 minutes before fight time. All right, everybody, report back to the channel. We got a prayer circle going for Jimmy Crute to please use the fucking wrestling and not just get himself killed on the feet.
Yeah, don't strike. Fucking.
Please don't get your face broken again, Jimmy. Don't do it to us. All right. Next up. Man, I got to give a shout out here to the heavyweight GOAT, Parker Porter. Gave me the follow on Instagram, so absolute legend of the game as far as I'm concerned. But, I got some concerns for my man. He's flying across the world here. It was supposed to be the Tafa bros. It was supposed to be Junior as well as Justin on this card tonight, and wasn't able to make it happen. But we know how the UFC likes those brother combinations, right? We just saw it with the Bonfils. They want to do that family marketing if they can. One championship was doing a little bit of that, and the UFC is like, hey, anything you could do, we could do better. They're going to look and try and find any sibling pairings that they possibly can, in my opinion, to sign. Daukaus brothers, you're seeing the same stuff, right? Gave them a million opportunities. So I think that this is another chance where Tafa is not very good, but who's been given these premium placements? Tafa. They like him for this market. They like it. He kind of looks like a Mark Hunt character, that they'll just repackage it and sell it to you that way. It's like, that's what they're bringing him in for. He got slept in the first round against a math teacher, and he slept somebody in the first round. So he's got the wins, and then he's got, some questionable losses as well. He has not been productive as a UFC favorite, but this is a fight where it's probably going to close pick him. A lot of people are interested in the Parker Porter side here. I think Parker is pretty limited to a decision win. After what we saw in his, in what we saw in his recent bouts. I thought that he should have easily submitted 2 of his recent opponents. I'm drawing a blank on who exactly it was. I think it was, my goodness.
Pedro?
Alain Badeau. I mean, that one should have been a freaking gimme. It's Chase Sherman. Okay, it was Chase Sherman. I always confuse Chase Sherman. Who's the other jar of milk? Vandera. Like a couple of these guys, they're all interchangeable heavyweights to me. But in this case, right, I think that he should have probably submitted Chase Sherman. I mean, Chase Sherman got absolutely routed on the ground by Jake Collier. Like it's not like you need the best skills in the world to finish that guy on the ground. So Parker, I think, has some ground skills, maybe enough to beat somebody like Tafa, who's real certifiable bad on the ground. But if he doesn't get it there, and he didn't look athletic enough to get it there against Alain Badeau, who normally quits at the 2-minute mark, it's all just big red flags for me. I think I'm rooting for Parker. I'm hoping he goes over there and gets the win. I think the longer this fight goes, the better chance he has to win this fight. But in the early going, I'm going to be watching through my hands because Tafa's a bad man, and he's going to be swinging heavies, and I don't think he's going to be worried at all about what Parker's throwing back at him. So That for me is the big red flag on the Parker side. I don't think he has a ton of power. Don't think he's a very dangerous, lethal fighter at this stage of his career. But he is experienced. He is savvy. He throws good volume for a heavyweight. And he's a tough son of a bitch. Unless you put him down, he ain't going to quit on you. Even against Daukaus, he took that fight on short notice, cut a bunch of weight, got dropped, and he was trying to get back in the fight every time with everything he had. So he'll fight for your money. But when you're laying chalk with a guy like that, you just have to ask yourself, am I making a smart financial decision? You know, he's much older fighter here, I think by 9 years. Like, there's just some things pointing against him. So like Parker Porter, but 16 years deep in an MMA career, laying chalk on somebody flying halfway across the world, probably not the move. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I put a tweet out, I think yesterday. I like to do these tweets. It's like, if you're going to bet X, don't. So in this case, it was, if you're going to bet Porter, don't. 37 years old, hauling his fat ass 15 hours across the world with a 2-3 record. Think about what you're doing, people, for fuck's sake. And I stand by that. Like, that doesn't advocate a bet for Tafa. It just means you can't bet Porter in this situation. Yeah, he may win a decision, but everything Liam said, he lacks power. He wasn't convincing in his fight against Prado when he should have took him out. You can see why the UFC handpicked him to come and fight Tafa, you know, in Australia. And like I say, I'm not advocating a bet for Tafa. I'm just giving you all the, you know, wrongs about Porter. I think Tafa is half decent, but look at his, you know, competition, not the strongest. He did impress me, but it was Harry Hunsucker. You know, he had some good sprawls. You know, he looked good, sprawling and brawling, got him out of there. He's going to need that here. I think Porter will try and clinch at some point. But everything you said, man, the travel, the age, you can't bet Porter, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Porter by decision would be the way I would go if I was to bet him. I'm looking right now on the market. Porter by knockout is plus 450. Couldn't pay me to bet that.
That's a scary 15.
Porter by sub is plus 700 as well. Like, pretty nerfed props. Porter by decisions plus 360. Yeah, I'd probably just have to lay off that. I don't think that's a terrible number, though. I mean, Parker Porter's basically just been a decision machine in the UFC. So plus 360 for his primary win condition. I don't hate that. Tafa's lost a couple decisions as well, but I think Tafa's got a bad record in decisions too, if my memory serves. But either way, we probably already spent too much brain power on this stupid fight. So we can move to the next one here, which should be a very compelling fight. You've got Rude Boy, Randy Brown, coming in to take on the talk of the town, the next big thing, Jack Della Maddalena. And I think Jack is really talented, man. I went back and watched his stuff. He's a dangerous fighter. He's got very good combinations with the hands. He's a dangerous boxer. Puts a lot of pressure on guys. He forces you to make a lot of decisions quickly because he's not afraid to get in a fight. He's not afraid to be in a bad situation. But that confidence and that, willingness to be in the fire, it has nearly cost him twice in 4 outings so far in the UFC. Like Ange Lusa, if he had a better head and arm choke, he's the talk of the town. He's the guy coming in with some hype and getting a little bit easier matchmaking off the rip. Still never got an answer to what exactly was going on with what's his name, Ramazan Emeev, his side going into that fight. Entire side of his body was just red as shit. The whole thing. He got hit there once and he curled up in a ball. Guy normally doesn't fight like that. So I was like, did this guy have an injury? Was this guy like physically ill? Or I don't understand what was happening there. But again, big red flag, big weird win in the mix. What's the most impressive win for Jack Della so far in his career? Maybe the Ange Lusa fight because he went to hard 15. He got out of some bad situations. The Emeev win is a good win on paper. But then again, we just introduced the weird circumstances. Danny Roberts has never met a punch that he couldn't be knocked out by. He's a tough enough guy, but he just doesn't have a good chin. So if you hit him cleanly, he's getting wobbled, he's getting rocked. That was a layup kind of fight. Pete Rodriguez, again, brought in on short notice, looked pudgy for that fight with due respect, and then got blasted in the first round. There was not a punch thrown that missed for Jack in that fight. Like anytime he wanted to touch Pete Rodriguez, he touched him. He had a huge reach advantage there as well. So Jack has had it his way, basically every UFC fight. And even still, he's been in danger. The Angelusa fight I mentioned. How about Ramzan Ameev basically realizing he's like, okay, this guy's going to tune me up like a guitar on the feet. Like, I am not going to do this for much longer. So he goes snap down, front headlock, and sells out for, like basically tries to gator roll himself into a Darce choke. Did it work? No. Did it almost work? Yeah. And that's baffling and scary because like Ramzan Ameev isn't a submission machine either. Who's the last guy Angelusa submitted? It's like, they're not prolific sub guys. So everybody's saying Randy Brown, he's not that great of a wrestler. He's not that great of a grappler. He's opportunistic. He's willing to get in a fight. So, he's one of the few guys in the UFC's long history that has a one-arm rear naked choke. He's got the attributes to do it. So for me, there's a lot to like about Randy Brown by sub at 13-1. But then here, let me walk myself back because I feel like Randy Brown could be the mush bet of the week, where it just seems like everywhere I look, somebody is either on Jack Della ITD or they are on Randy Brown and Randy Brown by sub. So I'm like, do I let this fight go? Do I bet the over? Like, I feel like the contrarian over is a potential angle on this fight. Looking at the betting splits, basically it's all one-way traffic on the unders and on Jack Della. In terms of the public betting splits. But then again, you look at somewhere like Bet MMA where we track our plays, you can't find somebody on Bet MMA without a Randy Brown ticket. So it's a very difficult fight for me to call. I feel like there's a good reason for both guys to win. Jack Della's young. He could easily be rebuilt. He's got real skills, but he needs to address his ground game or he will be exposed at a later time and date. It's like, you can't get by in the welterweight division with guys like Shavkat and Khamzat and real grapplers and have that kind of deficiency. You will get exposed. So that for me is like the UFC could be sending him a message like, hey, fix that hole in the game. But also they're giving him a guy in Randy Brown who's been knocked out by somebody who was flat on their back before. Like Randy Brown has some huge red flags, glaring red flags as well about his game. He's a guy that was picked off of looking for a fight. So, but it's not like one of these guys has the Dana White seal of approval. They both do, as a matter of fact. But this is one guy, only guy on the card from Perth, Australia, for whatever it's worth. So only Western Aussie Perth boy on the card. It's Jack Della Madellena. What do you think of this one, Rich?
Yeah, I've stayed away. I can't get Randy Brown getting TKO'd by Nico Price out of my head, from Top Control. That was a horrible look. And full disclosure, I've bet against Jack in his last two fights and lost. So my record on him isn't good at all. They were big underdogs, so I didn't put anything stupid on them. But still, my read on Jack is just terrible. It's hard to get a read on him because, like you say, he's been fighting bums, late notice people like Pete. And who else has he got? Yeah, that Angelusa fight, like you said, Ramzan Ameev, he was just ready to curl up with one punch. So it's hard to get a read on him, man. I don't blame people for taking the shot on Brown here. I do think Brown's grappling is good enough to submit him, and the number is nice. If someone asked me what you think about Brown, I'd say, yeah, good kicks, good range management, and good submissions. Like you said, opportunistic. So yeah, I don't hate the sub bet. But I've already made like 2 or 3, and not every fucker can win by sub. So I'll leave that one. But yeah, I'll be watching as a fan, man.
Yeah, that's been my problem as well. It's like I've left this one on the cutting room floor. The number's getting slightly worse. So like if I'm gonna go, I have to pretty much go soon on Randy Brown by sub. It's like 13-1 still on some markets, but it's such a hard fight for me to call because like I think both of them present unique challenges, and like I think that the fight going over is a good contrarian take, but I also think they both have such a clear path to the finish. Like Randy Brown's chin is his fatal flaw. It's what will always cost him at the highest level, in my view. He gets hit, and sometimes when he gets hit, he reacts really poorly and goes out. So it's like that you can't really change. You can get in better shape. You can keep better distance, but unless he's grappling here, he's always going to be susceptible. And what I like about guys like Jack from a meta standpoint is that Jack never lets there be nothing happening. You watch his fights, like he's always forcing action on you. He's forcing you to fight at a ridiculous pace, and he's willing to go there with you. He's willing to go into these bad situations because he feels like he'll come out the other side better. And it reminds me in some ways of a Tony Ferguson, but with a little bit more like fundamental boxing. Just like what he wants to do is get you into this high pressure situation where you fold first. And it happened to Edson Barboza. He was tuning up Tony Ferguson. He was landing the better shots. I don't even think Jack Della's defense is elite. He gets hit with a lot of clean shots when he's striking, but he's putting you under duress, and he's the one initiating almost all the contact. So I feel like he gets off on more of his shots, and he puts you in a position to fold first. So it's good stuff. It's part of the MMA meta. He's fun, but I do see the flaws as well. And I think that this could be a coming out party, or it could be a crying in the coffee. How did we all lay Jack Della ITD? So far I've laid off it, but I can understand the takes on both sides.
I like what my 2 cents said in the comments. I think Randy will be winning until he isn't. I've seen some fights where he's feeling himself in there a bit too much, trying to put on a bit of swag, just punches barely missing his face.
That's the New Yorker in him.
I can see him fucking about and getting found out, man. So, yeah, I can't trust him, man.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Should be a violent fight, but could be a fight that ends up getting a little bit extended as well. I think both these guys are tough, and this is a huge fight for their career advancement. Like, winner of this fight's getting a huge fight in the top 15 next. That's a fact. So I think that, if that's Jack Della, it's going to be an even bigger fight. But Randy Brown, it'd be a 5-fight win streak. It would be a pretty significant milestone in his career, biggest win in terms of public perception in his career as well. So big opportunity for the New Yorker. I'll be rooting for him for that reason, but he's got a tough task ahead of him. Next up, one of my more confident takes on the card, so I'm happy to get us started on this one. But we've got Yair Rodriguez taking on Josh Emmett for the interim featherweight title. I've had good success betting on both of these guys throughout their UFC run. Yair Rodriguez made me a bag of money in his fight against Brian Ortega, and I know what everybody's thinking. It's a lucky win. Like, I can't believe it. The shoulder. And I actually hear that argument. But also, I'm going to just try and explain where I'm coming from when I say, if I was at a jiu-jitsu tournament and, me and my coach are talking and I'm like, yeah, the guy overhooked me and then I pulled my arm out and I pulled out my shoulder. Me and my coach would have no question about whether I got submitted or not. We would both be very aware of what had happened. But for some reason in MMA, he goes for an overhook. The guy thinks he's fine to pull his shoulder out and he goes and then sits back because he just dislocated his own shoulder. And everybody's like, wow, what a tragic injury that was. I can't believe that. It's like, yeah, you're trying to hurt his arm. He's trying to put him in an uncomfortable position. Ortega wanted to keep that body lock really close. And in doing so, he gave Yair an opportunity to mangle his shoulder. It's just, I think for me, that fight was mildly concerning because Yair got neutralized against the fence for 2 minutes. Outside of that, everything I saw was positive from Yair because he was beating his ass on the feet, in my opinion. He looked great at distance. He was landing his kicks. He landed very hard punching combinations. All the commentators could talk about was, wow, look at the chin on Brian Ortega because he keeps taking clean 1-2s down the middle at high speeds. Josh Emmett, he's not a fighter that has perfect defense. He does a lot of things well, but he mostly likes to box. He likes to get in the pocket. He likes to throw to the head, and he likes to throw to the body. He's not doing much of anything else. I bet Josh Emmett in his last fight, and I predicted Calvin Kattar by split decision. So you guys can't even come at me and say, "Oh, well, you did." No, this time I got you. Because I told you bet on Josh Emmett, but I also said Calvin Kattar should win the fight by split decision. That's basically what we got. Josh Emmett fights within a close margin. He lands big, heavy punches, but he hasn't knocked anybody out in years. He has been much less active. He's been dealing with surgeries. He's been dealing with injuries. He's been dealt with long bouts of inactivity. And so where he might have had opportunities to take losses against credible contenders, he hasn't been fighting them very often. When he did, he fought Shane Burgos, a win that aged not very well. And I say that with all love and respect. Shane Burgos is now not in the UFC top 15, right? We can just say it that way. So that win is not really as meaningful to the current division. What about a Movsar Evloev? What about an Arnold Allen? What about these guys that are on win streaks that are real credible over the young up-and-coming guys in the division? Josh Emmett kind of got this favorable run up. Am I saying that Yair didn't? No, of course he did. He got to fight Brian Ortega coming off of the title run, coming off of historic life-changing beatings at the hands of Volkanovski and Holloway. Yeah, good timing. Timing is everything in this sport. But now you have a young Yair who has experience under his belt, who went 5 hard 5s with Max Holloway, and by the way, turned him into a wrestler. Remember the last guy to do that? Me either. So I just think that when you talk about how dangerous this fucking guy is on the feet, I am not betting against that. I am not looking at somebody who's 37 with possible injuries, with reduced capacity to find the knockout in recent bouts, who, despite finding knockdowns, has not been finding finishes. It's like, those are big red flags for me. The last knockout win I think he had is against Michael Johnson, who, by the way, has been past his prime for several years, including at the time he fought Josh Emmett, when he was at 145, his second weight class, when he had already tried to do the rebuild and everything. So his durability was potentially compromised down at 145 as well. That was the last time that Josh Emmett secured one of these big knockouts. So other guys could knock out Shane Burgos in the UFC. It happened. Hated to see it, but it happened. Calvin Kattar, extremely durable, right? I'll let you off the hook for that one. But I thought Calvin Kattar probably won that fight and probably outlanded him and probably did the better work in the boxing. I think that speed for speed, Yair Rodriguez is much faster than Calvin Kattar and Josh Emmett. I think he's going to be getting off on the cleaner strikes on the feet. And I'm calling my shot. Flying knee knockout. Yair Rodriguez. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I like it, man. I'm with you. Yair's the side. I think wasn't Michael Johnson winning that fight as well until he got...
he was up 2.5 rounds to 0.
Yeah, he's...
pitching a shutout. That's the classic Michael Johnson.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you fully, man. I put 2 tweets out this week about fighters, and the second one was Emmett. If you're betting Emmett, don't. 37-year-old, 5'6" midget with a limited skill set, possible injuries. Rodriguez's movement and diverse striking will give him plenty to think about. And that's it. That's what breaks down the fight, man. Like, he's going to move too much for him. Emmett's going to look to just wing punches and primarily box. He's not going to grapple Yair like he should. He is old, traveling, the rest of it. And I think we've already seen this fight kind of play out already. Yair versus Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens does the same thing. He doesn't go for takedowns. He likes to throw bombs on the feet with power, put everything into every shot. And what did Yair do, man? Kick the fuck out of him. All sorts of kicks, front kicks, leg kicks, throw in his combinations, his 1-2s. He dropped Stephens. I think it was round 1, maybe round 2. So yeah, Yair's the side for me. Don't hate the KO shot either. But I think the money line's pretty decent, man. So yeah, all over it.
Yeah, and when you look, I always think about the numbers, right? So first and foremost, I did beat the number on the KO. I bet it at plus 350. It's down to about plus 300. But the reason why I liked it was because you go back and look, Yair Rodriguez is an extremely impressive favorite. Both, like, nobody gets to a title fight by being a fucking complete scrub on the betting lines, right? Like, they have to win something somewhere along the way. But not all title fighters are created equally. Some of them, if you had bet on them in every fight as a favorite, you would have lost money. But if you bet on them when they're a dog, you would have made money, right? So you look at people by their odds category. When I look at Josh Emmett, underdogs overall in Josh Emmett fights have just way fucking overperformed what's normal, what's possible. So Josh Emmett as an underdog, 6-1, amazing ROI. You expect regression when things like that happen. I know that Yanni the Greek gets a lot of shit because he says it about every trend or whatever, but in a lot of cases, you do expect that. When you've had 6 times the underdog comes through for Josh Emmett. By the way, last time people didn't think it should have. Other times people didn't necessarily agree with the decision. So when you look at split decision wins and these kind of things, there's a little bit of luck involved. There's a little bit of variance involved in that. Eventually the bill comes due. When you're 37 going on 38 and you've been knocked down 1 time in the UFC, eventually that's going to change. That bill's going to come due. He's been hit with hard shots. He's been hurt. He absorbed a shit ton of damage in the Calvin Kattar fight. If you look at his last 3 fights, a total of 11 rounds, he's absorbed 325 plus significant strikes over that period. That's a shit ton of damage. And he's not getting any younger. So when you look at a division that has a young average age where most of the guys that have been fighting for this belt, it's the reason why Volkanovski is so impressive, is because he's an older guy that's made hay in this division. Everybody else is basically, 31, 32 and younger, because it's a hard division to age up in. And that's why Josh Emmett's doing 1 fight a year. Yair Rodriguez, on the other hand, He's been doing one fight a year because he's trying to negotiate for more money, and he has some leverage. The UFC wants Yair Rodriguez real bad in big fights and big opportunities. He's big for the Spanish language market. He's big for UFC Mexico. I think that these are important things to think about when you look at how other fighters are being positioned. So for me, you fly over somebody like Josh Emmett because he's earned it. Meritocracy, to keep the wheels of the organization churning. But I think that Yair Rodriguez is there because he's a potential future star, because they would love to see him fight Alexander Volkanovski in the future. And this is a way to do that. So I think that he's going to win the fight. I think he's going to win it by knockout. But just wanted to give some credit to the Josh Emmett backers. I understand the trends. I understand the things that point in this direction. But Yair Rodriguez is 6-0 as a closing line favorite. That's a little bit more replicable over time, potentially. In addition, 3 times out of 6, he's won by finish in those fights. So.
Yeah, it's good information, man. And it's true what you say. His face looked like absolute shit after that Calvin Kattar fight. He's very hittable. And it's just a funny position to be in. Emmett gets the shot after, in my opinion, losing. It's a robbery. And then you got Yair winning off a injury. Just a weird.
It's the weirdest setup for a title fight. Anticlimactic, if you will.
Yeah.
And neither one of the guys are promoting the fight at all. So there you go. It just fits right in with the bill.
We should mention Emmett's missus as well. Go check her out on Instagram. Very fun.
Yeah, exactly. He'll be all right. No matter what happens this week.
Josh
Emmett, he's already secured the bag. But guys, we got the main event coming up. Islam Makhachev, Alexander Volkanovski. Incredible fight at 155 pounds. Very excited to break it down for you. So without further ado, I'm going to give you my thoughts. Islam Makhachev, extremely dangerous fighter, guys. When you go back and look, the things that stand out. Islam, you would think, if you just went by public perception, he's a decision machine. He's boring. He stinks, like whatever. It's just not true. It's just like you go back and then look at the data. It's like the guy's an under machine. He's been scheduled for 5 rounds on more than one occasion. He's never made it past the 4th. Submitted Thiago Moises, high-level black belt. Submitted Charles Oliveira, high-level black belt. Nothing to sneeze at when you're doing these things. Davi Ramos was able to grapple with him. No problem. Like, he has gone with world-class competitors in the UFC and done fine, done great. He's proven he could go a hard 15 minutes. He could work at that kind of pace rate. He's proven he can go beyond that. He was the one that broke Thiago Moises down the stretch in that fight, and it was largely defined by the grappling. That was the biggest decider in the fight. And Thiago Moises got 1 takedown, and he held it for 0 seconds, right? It's like, that's the difference, in my opinion, between Islam Makhachev and his opponents is people can't control Islam, but Islam can control them. In this fight, Alexander Volkanovski has so often been able to bail himself out with his wrestling, with his strength, with his physicality, with the fact that he wants it better than people and he's a fucking ornery son of a bitch. Like, he is a incredible competitor. It's a reason I respect him so much. But that can only get you so far when you have skill and size as on the other side. Like, grappling especially, there's a reason why a lot of these title fights that have taken place, champ versus champ and this and that, it takes place between 2 strikers. Because that's what's fun and compelling. It's like, what'll happen if I take this striker and put them together, because the size and the speed you can really start painting a narrative. But anybody that's ever grappled knows when you start putting grapplers together, it's about who's bigger and who's stronger. Because more often than not, if there's not a time limit, if I can get on top of you and punch you in the face, it's like, yeah, being bigger is going to matter a whole fucking shit ton. So for me, the thing that was so impactful rewatching the tape is that guys that are really committed to getting back to their feet, guys that are committed to not quitting, to staying in the fight, they still break against Islam eventually. Like Thiago Moises, if you had polled him before the fight, like, want to lose by decision, would you rather lose by KO? He would rather lose by knockout. He would rather lose by decision. No black belt wants to get submitted by one of these Dagestani guys. And he got routed on the ground. Islam has now done that to multiple guys. He routed Charles Oliveira on the ground, better in every position, past his guard, like puts you under such duress from top half guard that guys quit. That is what's happening in these fights. I'm like, if you guys are watching and going, I don't even understand how he's winning. he's putting an insane amount of pressure on people from the top half guard, and they know I can't get up. I have to be here for X amount of time, more minutes. What happens when you're in a position where somebody else is just controlling you is you start taking stock. Like, all right, there's 14 minutes left. Like, you know, if he just does this for 2 more minutes, I already lost 3 rounds. You literally can't even do the right things because you start breaking mentally. I think that that's probably an eventuality in this fight. Volk is an insane competitor. So if he pulls this one off, I'll just have to take my hat off to him. Cheers. Like, I don't know what else to say because I've thought watching back from Islam pre-UFC, this guy looks like a world champion. He just does. When he was fighting on the regional scene, he looked way more dominant than everybody he fought. He was mostly getting any position he wanted, beating the shit out of them, and then taking an arm home with him. So it's like he's a violent guy when he needs to be. He's a controlling guy when he needs to be. He could break your arm. He could choke you unconscious. Like what? I don't know what else he needs to do in this fight. Like, that's what he's going to try and do. He's going to have the size advantage to do it. I think he's going to have the wrestling upside. Volkanovski, when he came to the UFC, was talking about maybe going down to 135. He said, I know I'm the smallest 145er. Now he's going up to 55 to take on a big 55er who's probably a future 170. It's like, that sounds like a terrible business plan. Sounds like a horrible management decision. It's got big upside, but it also has huge downside risk because Volk is the #1 pound for pound guy, and he could be made to look silly in this fight. And that sounds, you know, a little bit offensive maybe, but it's also just true. Grappling has as many variables. It's more so about who's better and who's stronger and who's more technical. And I think all 3 boxes are going to be checked by Islam. So I think Islam wins. I think he probably wins by sub. What do you think of this one, Rich?
Yeah, I'll be a bit of a contrarian. I'm not betting Volkov. I think the fact that this is for the lightweight belt, they're not going to... UFC ain't setting this up. They want Islam as the lightweight champ. It kind of just makes no sense to me. I put a tweet out earlier saying I don't even think this fight would take place. It'd get cancelled in some way. That doesn't look likely now as we're getting closer to the fight. But it's just a stupid fight to make, a pointless one of these like pound for pound fights, which just doesn't need to happen. But yeah, in terms of the fight, I think Islam wins by decision. I don't think the KO is in play. I don't think he can KO Volkanovski at all. I think, if anything, Volkanovski can KO him. I don't like his fight against Martins when he got dropped. It was like a check hook sort of thing. So yeah, if anyone's knocking anyone out, it's going to be Volk. And I don't think he's going to sub. I just can't see it. I think it's going to be a decision. Look at the who was that black belt you was mentioning, just who he fought?
Thiago Moises.
Yeah, Moises. That was like in round 4. And I don't rate that guy. I know he's a black belt, but Volkanovski, unlike the other opponents Islam has fought, he's game as fuck, man. There's no quitting that guy. His mental game is 100%. Look at the Ortega guillotine that almost happened. So, you know, you got to do something special to put Volk away, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think Islam decision, and stop making these stupid fights, man. They're pointless.
I think that this one has more merit than some of the others, but I prefer to just see weight classes resolved. I want to see who's the best at the weight. That's what I care the most about. If you're going to move weight classes permanently and say, hey, I'm done with this one. It was fun while it lasted, but I'm a lightweight now. I have no problem with that, but I agree. It kind of just muddies the water. It makes it so they could present another featherweight title fight on the same night. You know, that's all that this is being done for, in my view. Because Volk is the real centerpiece around which this card is built. There's no Israel Adesanya right now. So they've got to have that hook. There's no Robert Whittaker. It's Volk. Volk is the big sell. But I also think that that's the local market sell. I think the global sell is Islam Makhachev. You know, people don't necessarily equate like the size and significance of Khabib Nurmagomedov as a Muslim athlete to like why it matters to the bottom line for the business. This is expanding the UFC to more audiences. And so there is good financial reason for them to want Islam Makhachev to be their banner representative, especially at 155. And there's no downside here for them because if Volk loses, no problem. We have a preset matchup for Volk to come back to, the winner of the fight that happened before, and we'll do it at 145. Thanks for stepping on the grenade for us. And I think that most lightweights right now don't want to take this fight with Islam Makhachev, and the ones that do can't sell, like Beneil. So it's just like, until they can try and find another lightweight that they could sell with coming off a win. By the way, Conor McGregor off a win at 170. If he said, I'm going down to lightweight, he's getting the call. Like, I'm letting you know what's going to happen now, because people will say, oh, this is bullshit. And I'm just, yes, sure. If it's a meritocracy, you're right, but it's a business. This isn't about making friends. They're going to fucking put on whatever will sell more pay-per-views, and it will sell more pay-per-views to have those guys in headlining roles. So for me, that's the other thing to like about the Islam side here. Volkanovski regional market cap, like not really a huge ceiling outside of Australia, New Zealand, and being fun for fight fans. We all love them. But I think that's a little bit of a cap. I think that Islam Makhachev has a much higher ceiling as a star and as a long-term player in the UFC, 3 years younger as well. Something to note here. That's why for Volk, this fight needs to happen now. He's got to make this move. He's got to try and cement those legacy pieces right now before the wheels fall off, because this is his second career in athletics. He's been going hard like a psychopath for 10 years in fighting plus. And this was after a rugby career. Those aren't sports that are kind to the body, that set you up for longevity, in my humble opinion. So I think that he's going to try and burn out that star this year. He's going to try and get another big fight. If he wins this one, he's going to try and turn it into a big opportunity. Bless him for it. But I think that this is a really tough fight for him. I think that it's the kind of fight that afterwards we might be saying, why did we put that together? Because we had this great champion, and now we've potentially damaged his stock, to try and build somebody else. I don't think it's necessary. I think we could build both their stock by having them fight legitimate contenders in their own class.
Yeah, exactly, man. Volk's got a good record. He's on a hell of a win streak. He's a great champion. That's why I don't see the point in making this fight. And I fully agree with everything you're saying, man. It's just crazy to me how some people don't even care about narratives. When they're betting, they just watch a bit of tape, do a bit of tapology and, place their bets. Narratives definitely matter, man. And like you said about markets, look at that fucking Indonesian guy who fought the Indian guy on the last card. They've signed him on a L. Was it him? Jenka, the Indonesian guy?
Yep, they signed Jenka. Yep. Just to be in that market, that region of the world. So you do have to think about, the business aspect of it, why they're making these fights, why they're fucking flying Porter over to Australia when he's fought in the US for all of his career. You have to think about these things, man. Totally agree. Look at card placement. Look at all these little factors. I always say it's the little things that make a big difference. What do you look at that other people don't take into account? Half the people out there do the same things every time. You know what they're going to do. They're going to look at the tapology. They might watch the 2 most recent fights. Anything you could do beyond that will set you apart. So let that be word to the wise. But Rich, thank you so much, man. I had an absolute blast. I think that we gave the people a lot of great information. If you could let the people know, where can they find you, all the great work that you're doing?
Yeah, Fight Night Bets. Get me at Twitter. I'm running a Patreon now. So if you want my bets, there's something like $12. Not a lot. So yeah, get me on Twitter, man. Hit me up. Just to address what someone said in the comments. I know it's a bit of what is it? Conor McGregor. Yeah, I think Conor McGregor beats what's his name? Chandler at the end of Tough. I think again, like we're saying about narratives, the UFC is setting him up. He needs a win. I wouldn't even be surprised if Chandler throws that. I think he's fully Dana's bitch. He's a UFC shill, and he'll take the L for the UFC if the money's right. So yeah, Conor's getting the W there all day.
Yeah, he's gonna cash in on that Dana White privilege, I suppose.
But yeah, good show, man.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. Guys, we'll be back at it next week. Is the card as good? No. Will the bets be as good? We hope so. So, guys, make sure, if you're not already, get subscribed to the channel. If you have an idea for what we should name this show, drop it in the comments, please, because we're going to try and name it for next week. And this is something we're going to look to keep doing, try and give out some winning information, try and help you guys out. You can support me. You can find all my work at Liam Picks Fights. I did put out a video earlier this week. UFC Never Have I Ever. I think it's pretty fun. Guys, go check it out. It's on my Twitter. It's on my Instagram as well. Just talking about some things that have never happened before for some of these UFC fighters, including Parker Porter making his first appearance on a UFC pay-per-view main card. So with all that being said, guys, God bless. Enjoy the fights. Come back next time. We'll have all the same fun again. Take care. We'll do it again. See you guys.